So thank you everyone for being here today for the My Star Learning Series. Brand new resources for 2022. What do we have for in store for you for your classroom this year? We're really excited to share these resources. And thank you so much for being here and for spending your time with us today. We know you've had a long day at school, so we'll get right to it. Today, we're going to give you a highlight and tell you about the enhanced units that we've released for this school year. A couple of those have a reading apprenticeship pilot that goes along with them. And Steph will be here to tell you a little more details about that. We have some new independent student activities to help free up some of your time and give you a breather every once in a while. We've added some, thinking and discussion routines. And there's been some added assessment enhancements that the assessment team has been working really hard on that we're very excited to share. And then we've rolled out a handful of new off-the-shelf lessons in the last 6 months or so. So we wanted to make sure everyone was aware that those are there. Those are a great start to the year, a great filler in between units if kids need a break. So we'll tell you about those as well. And because today we're going to go in and out of breakout rooms throughout the session, we won't have a full-on breakout room discussion at the very end of the session. So we'll just have an open question and answer. You can put your questions in the chat and we can make sure to revisit those at the end of the session with everyone today. So we have a great lineup of presenters here for My Star to share these enhancements. Chris Gear is here. She's our professional learning coordinator. I'm sure you've seen an email or two from her occasionally. And we also have Steph Tubman is here. She is our coordinator of curriculum development, and they have both worked very hard on these enhanced units and these the additions that we've made into these lesson plans. So I'm very excited to have them here to share all of this great work that they've done. Kind of corralling us to get rolled out to you. My name is Lindsay Watch. I work on the professional learning and curriculum development teams for My Star. So I've been a part of these enhancements as well. And I'll be your session facilitator today. So if there's anything you need, any technical issues, feel free to private chat me and I can get you what you need. So without further ado, I will have Steph Tubman introduce our unit enhancements.
Thanks, Lindsay. Really excited to be here today and to see some familiar friends and also new friends. So thank you for joining us. You can go to the next slide, Lindsay. So as we're talking about the unit enhancements, we thought it would be good to start with, well, what does that mean to us? I'm just going to explain a few of the things that you'll see in these enhanced units. First is updated or a new unit challenge scenario, a tighter storyline. So meaning that we've thought about how the lessons are sequenced together to make the flow more natural for students and for you. Including, maybe we saw some places where it was like, okay, that doesn't need to be 2 lessons. That could be 1 lesson. So we think that you'll like that. And that goes along with bullet 3, which is shortened unit length. That was a really big goal that we had in enhancing these units. Additional readings with differentiated guides, which Chris is going to talk a little bit more about. Suggested visible thinking and facilitation strategies, especially for the uncover and share. Chris is also going to touch on that. And then improved assessments. So we worked hand in hand with the assessment team to also update the format of the assessments, make sure that they were still aligned to the units. And we also have a resource now as we're making these enhancements. We call it the curriculum enhancements roadmap. So when you're in the slides on this particular slide, you can click on that link. That'll take you to a Google Doc, and that gives an overview of what we're enhancing or making changes to at any particular time. And also kind of the timeline for that when we're thinking to push out the changes. So we're excited to have that for you and for your professional learning facilitator so that you can see what's coming up and what's on the docket for us and for you. All right. So probably a big question. So what units are enhanced for this year, for this fall? So we're putting kind of things out right now on just like every fall for the full year. So this is kind of our slate for this year. We have 3 6th grade units, 6-1, 6-4, and 6-6, 2 7th grade units, 7-1 and 7-3, and 8-1 and 8-3. And that curriculum enhancements roadmap is linked again there at the bottom. of the slide. It's a great place to get more info about the details of what's going on with these changes and these enhancements. Probably the next question on everyone's mind is how to access these enhanced units, because who doesn't want access to something enhanced? So for 4 of the units, the changes are available now directly in your copy of the unit. So that's for 6.1, 7.3, 8.1, and 8.3. And then on the next slide, there's one unit available right now where you'll see the new enhanced unit alongside the original unit. And that's because in beta testing, there was some feedback from folks that this might take them a little bit more time to adapt and adjust to the new unit. And so we want to give folks time in your district with your team to make the decisions about how to switch over to that new unit. And so for 7.1, you'll see both versions of the unit available this year. And then we've got 2 6th grade units coming to your portal November 1. So 6.4, that'll be in beta test, meaning that it's not the final format of the unit. You can either this year teach the original unit if you want and just kind of ignore the beta test, or you can try the new beta version. And then we'll get some feedback from that beta test, and then we'll publish a final version again next fall of that unit. We're really excited about this version of 6.4. It keeps all the hands-on, all the really good aspects of 6.4, but it's a little bit smoother and a little bit clearer how the learning progression builds in that unit. And so we're really excited to share that with you. And then we're also putting out the published version of the 6.6 unit, which was beta tested in the spring. That'll be ready November 1st. And both of those will be available alongside the original as well. So you've got some time to think about, do you want to focus on teaching the original this year? Give yourself a little more time to learn about the changes in the unit and adjust to teaching that unit for the next year. Or if you want, you can just go straight in and teach that new version this year. It's a choice that you and your team can make. I'm also excited to tell you today about the Reading Apprenticeship pilot, which is integrated into 2 of the enhanced units. So you may have come to some of the learning series last spring where we had some of the Reading Apprenticeship folks here to talk about the framework and talk about the value of Reading Apprenticeship. It's a really rich approach. This is available now in 2 of the units, so in Unit 7.1 and Unit 8.1. If you weren't at the spring series, the key idea of Reading Apprenticeship is that students use literacy tasks to make sense of science ideas. So they're learning science through reading, but through doing critical thinking and metacognition of their reading and of their thinking. So it's a really powerful framework, and it really meshes nicely with MyStar. So along those lines, the pilot is integrated right into the unit, so right into the student guides. There's also a teacher version for every integrated task, and also teacher notes just to give you some guidance and thoughts about how this works and what it should look like. We think that you'll find it pretty intuitive, but there's also links to the Reading Apprenticeship website. If you have any questions, there's also some resources that they have on their site that help explain the approach and some of the strategies that are integrated. And then to participate in the pilot, you don't have to sign up or anything like that. You just would simply teach the RA tasks as written. And if you would keep some student samples, because really just being in the pilot, all that means is that you're willing to tell us about your experience. So we're going to follow up with a feedback survey this fall, and we're going to ask you if you don't mind to attach a couple examples of student work, because we really want to see how that's actually working in the classroom for students and for you. So that's really what the Reading Apprenticeship pilot is going to be all about. And we're really excited to hear what you all think, because we think it has value and can be really powerful, but what's most important is what our community thinks about it. So please let us know what you think, and look out for that feedback survey later this fall. So I think that's all for me. So thanks for having me today, and I'll be happy to take any questions at the end.
Thanks so much, Steph. That was a great rundown of the new enhancements. You can find all those details on the enhancements roadmap. I threw that link in the chat. And then Chris is here to talk about first some independent student activities that we added to our units.
Thanks. So I know from my time in the classroom and also my time as doing MyStar PL and listening to other teachers, that one of the things that we all really need are some things that we can give to kids on those days when we have subs, when there's a fire drill second hour, there's an assembly third hour, 30 kids leave to go to the band field trip, et cetera, right? They're just that kind of downtime happens far more often than we'd like, but it happens a lot. And what I found myself doing before was I would be looking, in the newspaper or whatever for some current events or some articles or something that I could give kids to do that would be valuable for, a valuable use of their time, but also related to what we were doing in class. And so we also have consistently heard teachers who are concerned about a lack of literacy practice in MyStar, along with other NGSS aligned curricula. And one of the things we want to consider is that English language arts involves writing and listening and speaking as well as reading. And we're doing writing, listening, and speaking like crazy. So there's already a lot of literacy packed into MyStar units, but that reading piece is important. And so and the other thing that we hear often from teachers is, how can I differentiate the work for my kids who struggle or my kids who are ready to, just take off? And so kind of wrapping that all together, all those needs, we decided to offer a reading selection at the end of each share in the enhanced units and in the middle lessons, and then offer reading guides for that reading selection that were differentiated. And so we have our level A reading guide has some text reading strategies built in, along with maybe some content questions, things we want kids to pull out of that text. And it's ideally for a student who reads about at grade level. And then for the below grade level kids, we're going to use that same text because the research on reading is that you really don't want to give kids a lower leveled text. If you can help it, you really want them to have access to grade level material, but provide supports. And so our level B reading guide does that. It lets kids access that grade level text, but with some extra supports. And then level C is for those kids who are already reading well above grade level. They don't need those basic kind of 6th and 7th and 8th grade reading strategies built in. They're ready to read and go beyond what's in the text. And so the level C reading guides skip some of the simple stuff and let kids launch into some more complex questions. And so, well, what you'll see in the middle lessons at the end of share is what you see here on the screen, where it says optional. First of all, these are optional. They're not required for students to get the content that they need in the lesson, but they are optional supports. And you'll see that there's a text, and then there are the 3 reading guides, and then there's a teacher version and some teacher notes. And so we're gonna take a look at one of these and try it out so that you can see what this might look like. And so we have an example differentiated reading guide, and it's the teacher version. So it has all 3 levels all in one document. The student versions are, a separate document for each level A, B, and C, but the teacher reading guide, they're all together. And so I color coded them, and we're going to put you in a couple of breakout rooms, and we're going to ask you to look at the color that's assigned to your breakout room specifically. So you're going to want to look at all 3 reading guides, but specifically look at the color that your breakout room is assigned, and decide if it's level A or B or C. So A is grade level, B is below grade level, C is above grade level. And so the document looks like this. And so if your breakout team is the purple group, you're going to look at the purple, specifically at the purple reading guide teacher version. And then you may compare it to the green, which is going to be another group. And then finally, we have a blue. And so we're going to ask you in your breakout rooms to kind of glance at all 3. They're all related to the same text, and decide which one's level A, B, or C. And then you're going to record on the next slide. If you're in breakout team 1, you'll record, what do you think about the purple? Team 2 will specifically analyze the green section and team 3 will analyze the blue. So what level do you believe it is, A, B, or C? And what evidence do you have for that? All right, everybody's back. Thanks so much. You guys nailed it. The purple is the above grade level and the green is the at grade level and the B is below. So thank you. It's not easy necessarily to always pick out exactly what the difference is, and that's pretty intentional. We want kids to feel like they're doing about the same amount of work. We don't want anybody to feel insulted, like their work is too easy. But we want to make sure that those above grade level kids are thinking a little harder and have the chance to stretch a little bit. And so you kind of want to balance that out. I was talking to Steph and Lindsay during the breakout. I went to some pretty significant differentiation training back in the day. Grosse Pointe sent me to University of Virginia for a couple of summers. And I used colors in my classroom for the levels. And we would do a little bit in the beginning of the year about learning styles, and everybody has different talents and strengths and weaknesses. And that might vary day by day. And so sometimes I was going to give them options about a different level of work to choose. And then I always let kids choose. So they knew the purple was going to be harder and the green was going to be about, grade level. And then the blue was going to be a little bit more support. And they would choose pretty darn accurately. And then they always had the option to back out, if they got into it and was like, this is too hard or whatever, they could back, or this is too easy, they could back out. And kids were really awfully good about selecting the correct one. So if you're going to use these, I would highly recommend that you let kids choose and that you spend a little bit of time the first time you roll it out talking about, it's know yourself, know your strengths and weaknesses. There's no shame in knowing who you are and what you need. And that can be different every day. You're not stuck in one group or anything like that. And then use something that's not sequentially ranked. And we purposely made A grade level, B is below, and C is above so that they're not sequential. So you want to help kids do what's best for them, but let them know that what they're doing is, honorable work, whichever group they're in. All right, thanks, Lindsay. One or two of the middle lessons in the enhanced units will not have the differentiated reading guides. Instead, they have analysis questions with Reteach support. And this is an opportunity to do a little formative assessment. And analysis questions are kind of an abbreviated, tend to be sort of multiple choice, real quick, kind of, where are we at? Are you getting what we're, teaching? Are you pretty good with this? Or do we need a little reteach opportunity? And so they tend to be in the lessons that have an embedded assessment, because those are, the assessment team has said, this is a good time to chunk, stop and kind of evaluate. And so again, they're optional, but you can use these to pinpoint maybe some kids who need a little reteach opportunity. And then there's a reteach activity that is designed to be something that you could do in your classroom with everybody if you want, but we know how difficult it is to pull 6 kids aside and reteach, and what does everybody else do in the meantime? So they're designed that they could be done in the resource room with a parapro, with a parent at home, with any other adult. And so that might be a way that you help your special ed teachers, help kids catch up or do a little reteach opportunity. So those will happen once or maybe twice in a longer unit. You'll see at least one opportunity for this analysis questions and reteach. Subplans, we have some wonderful MyStar teachers who looked at all of our units last spring and came up with 2 great articles and a reading guide at 1 grade level, but that's fine, for every single unit. So not just the enhanced unit. So no matter what unit you're teaching, you'll see on that unit homepage, the subplan reading resources, and you have 2 of those for every unit. So make sure you take advantage of those.
Yeah, hey, Chris, I've actually used some of those subplans already. We had a teacher that went somewhere else, not within the district, and they're having us cover. So I'm covering his classes right now, and I'm thinking, how can I cover them and be over here with my 7th grade classes? So
Right.
those sub plans came in really handy, and I love how it was tailored toward the content that we really want the students to start going after in the 8th grade. So nice job.
Thanks. That was some of our noise teachers. In fact, I think Lori's here, and Lori was
Yes,
one of the teachers who worked on these.
I'm here, and I was going to say, Chris, about the grade levels. So we use Newsella and we tried to use platforms that could allow you to change the grade level of the lesson plan as well, to go to high level or low, even though they, I think there is only one in there. You can, if you're on Newsella, adjust the grade level as well.
Yeah, right. Newsella will allow you to, yeah, you can choose that article at a different grade level. Yeah, so you can kind of differentiate that way. Excellent. Thanks. I'm glad you guys like them, and we are grateful to the noise teachers who created them. All right, routines and assessment enhancements. So there's some things that have some parts of the MyStar lessons that in the past were just kind of almost black box. It'd be like, okay, now have this discussion with your kids and the magic's going to happen. And so we know that you all have decision fatigue. I had decision fatigue every single day. It was like, oh, I just don't know what to do with this. I got to go look up some routine to do with kids, or we're going to do the same old, gallery walk that we do every single time. Like, what's new, what's different? You know how kids like to get up and move around, and they like something novel and unique. But you just don't have all of that in your head at one time. And so what we did in the enhanced units is in the uncovers and the shares, when kids have to get up and talk to each other, or we have some kind of whole class discussion, we've given you suggestions for some visible thinking routines. And we've done that on purpose to relieve your stress. We've also helped you think about moving kids. We're talking about those tighter storylines, and there's a ton of research that shows a tight storyline really helps all kids, builds equity, especially good for struggling learners. And so in between the end of one lesson and the beginning of the next, how do we move kids to that next lesson question and help them see that, hey, it was on the bubble map, or it was a question that you guys came up with, and it makes tremendous sense for us to move to this next lesson. It's not just the teacher decided this is what we're doing next. And so we have some navigation routines too that'll help you navigate and have that discussion with kids, 5 minutes, short discussion, but help them make sense of the flow of the unit. And so we're going to show you a few of those. So let's talk about the navigation routines first. This is going to help you transition kids, just mentally help them understand why are we going to do what we're going to do next. You're in the middle of that unit. And it does help build that idea that they're driving instruction. And we know that there's different times that you're going to need different kinds of navigation. So you're going to come up with that bubble map at the beginning of the lesson or at the beginning of the unit. But sometimes there are questions that we need to teach kids, but maybe they didn't come up with it, or they just didn't know enough to even ask that question at that time. Or they asked it, but it doesn't sound exactly like the next lesson driving question. And so how do we help them see that what they were asking is really what we're going to do? So we devised 4 or 5 different routines and kind of put them in a document. And then the CD team looked at how we want things to flow, and they made a suggestion. You don't have to use their suggestion, but it's, again, decision fatigue. So here are some of the ways that you can help that navigation. One of the simplest ways is what you maybe already do, is what I always did as I pointed to the bubble map. And I'm like, look, you guys asked, 2 or 3 questions here that are really close to the next lesson question. And so we're going to investigate your 3 questions. And then I'd move on to the next lesson. That's the teacher refers. Teacher points to the bubble map. Questions are there. They're close enough. You help kids make that connection. But maybe you need to kill 5 minutes at the end of the class, or you want kids to do a little reflection, or maybe the next question wasn't on the bubble map. It's not glaringly obvious. So we have this little navigation guide. It's kind of a half sheet of paper. Again, 5-10 minutes. You can give it to kids at the end of the check your progress, something to do while they're waiting for everybody to finish. And it helps them do a little reflection and maybe kind of come up with that next question. Now, we know that that can be really dangerous, because what if they come up with random questions we don't intend to do next? So you can use this navigation guide and collect it, and then come back the next day and say, hey, I looked at all those navigation guides, and guess what most of you think we should do next? So you can play that a little bit. So we have some different routines. You can ask students to reflect. Sometimes we have units that make a big shift, hard shift, like 8-3, we do sound, and then all of a sudden we shift the light. And so you can use this navigation routine to kind of help kids see, like, well, we kind of are done with sound. It's time to look at light. Or maybe they need to just add a question because nobody came near it at the beginning. And some of our units are kind of designed that way. The kids aren't going to really come up with all the questions at the beginning. And so you can use this navigation guide to help kids add a new question. So we're going to let you try out some of the navigation routines. So we're going to, everybody's pretty familiar with 6-1, at least from phase 1. And here's a class bubble map. These are actual questions that my kids came up with in my 6th grade class. So they're actual kid questions. And I kind of arranged them and kind of clumped them by lesson. So the related questions are kind of together. And some of them are pretty close to the lesson questions, and some of them might need a little massaging. So what we're going to ask you to do is think about, if you're moving from lesson 2 to lesson 3, and you've got that bubble map to work with. In lesson 2, kids learned what causes water to go into a stream. It's gravity, pulls it downhill. And we're going to move to lesson 3, where they're going to learn about the sun is the other driver. So gravity is one of the drivers of water movement, and the sun is the other. How are we going to finesse them from learning about gravity pulling water down to asking that question, what do we do next? How do we learn about, how heat and the sun causes water to move also? So we're going to ask you to click on this link here where we have the list of the navigation routines, and as a group in your breakout rooms, which navigation routine would you use in this situation? And there's no right or wrong answer, but it just gives you an opportunity to think about it a little bit. And then we're going to also look at another transition in unit 6-1 from lesson 6 to lesson 7. And so lesson 6 is the kind of the last lesson that has to do with water cycle. And lesson 7, we switch and have to teach kids about criteria and constraints, because they're going to make those decisions in the unit closer in lesson 8. And so that's kind of a big shift. So how would you help kids understand that they need to make that shift? What navigation routine might you use? And remember, you can refer back to that bubble map. There may be questions on there that are related, so that you could just do Teache or refer. And if there aren't, you might choose one of the navigation guide routines. So we're going to put you in breakout rooms again. We're going to ask you to think about that storyline shift from lesson 2 to lesson 3. Which routine would you use? You can select from that resource that's linked there, and why. And then again, look at the difference, the shift between lesson 6 and lesson 7, and give us a routine. And again, no right or wrong answers. This is just giving you an opportunity to kind of look at those routines and think about how they might be useful to you. All right, everybody's back. Thank you. Thanks for thinking so hard about this. I know we didn't give you a ton of time. We have one more activity for you to do, and we don't want you to be here all night, even though we enjoy your company. So the goal here really was to help you kind of dig in and think about how these different routines might help you make that connection for kids from one lesson to the next. And so in lesson 2 to lesson 3, students refer, teacher refer, depending on what questions you have on your bubble map. I can't remember what the CD team recommended, probably a teacher refer, because usually kids will ask something related to heat or the sun. But again, it would depend on your class bubble maps. And then lesson 6 to 7 is an example of one of those kind of pivot situations where we've been doing water cycle, water cycle, water cycle, water cycle. All of a sudden, boom, we're doing criterion constraints. Totally kind of not related. It's engineering skills that kids need to do that final solution. But because they know in the unit challenge that they have to make a decision, sometimes there are questions on the bubble map that are related to how will we know what's the best solution. And if that's the case, you can just do a teacher refer kind of little speech. You don't necessarily have to have kids use the navigation guide, but it's there in case you want it. And so we're trying to give you some supports and some choice, but also make some recommendations so you're not exhausted trying to decide everything on your own. And so you'll see in those lesson plans that along with the recommended navigation routine, there will be kind of a background information about, here's what we did in this lesson, here's the questions that are coming up in the next lesson. And so you don't have to click from lesson to lesson to know even where you're going. There's a kind of a summary of here's what we did, here's where we're going next, and even a sample little script. So trying to tighten up those storylines and make it a little easier for you at the same time. All right, the last thing we're gonna look at in terms of enhancements. Oh, visible thinking routine. Sorry, I was getting ahead of myself. We talked about these earlier a little bit. So in the uncover and in the share phases, we have a whole catalog full of visible thinking routines that will generate different kinds of discussions, whether you want to elicit ideas in the uncover, whether you want to come to consensus in the share. And we use that catalog to make some suggestions for you in the lesson plans. Don't have to use them if you don't want to, but it does give you some ideas of different ways for kids to do things, mix things up a little bit. Novelty is a huge motivator for kids. And so there you see at the bottom, there's a link to that visible thinking and discussion routines catalog. And that's also under resources on the teacher dashboard, where it says teaching pedagogy and strategies. You can find that catalog there. So you can always reference it from the teacher dashboard also. All right, assessments. So the assessment team has worked hard to make the assessments a little shorter, fewer cluster scenarios. They've worked to improve the formatting, some of the wording, make sure that those scenarios are engaging for kids. And then one of the nicest things that they did is in each pre-post test at the end of the teacher version, they put in this table. And this table evaluates each one of those cluster scenarios and tells you exactly what SEPs, CCCs, and DCIs are assessed in that cluster scenario. And it tells you what lesson that SEP or CCC or DCI was taught. And so this allows you to make all kinds of great decisions about if you need to shorten the test, if you need to break it up, maybe give part of it in the middle of the unit. Sometimes people want to do that, and part of it later, when kids have learned what they need to learn. It just gives you lots of options. And so we're going to take a look at one of these in your table or in your breakout rooms. And we're going to use, this is unit 6.1 again. And so there are 3 assessment items, and each item is a scenario with 3 or 4 or 5 questions that they're very specifically scaffolded to build kids sense making until they get to that last question, which is the big tie it all together question, right? So we never want to eliminate parts of the scenarios. We don't want to give kids just the multiple choice, for example, because the sense making process is scaffolded. Kids have to work through all the questions in that scenario. But what you could do if you needed to reduce the length for whatever reason, for an IEP, or just you're running out of time and you're not going to have time to grade all of it, whatever decision you would make as a professional, we're going to pretend that you need to reduce this assessment from 3 cluster scenario items to just 2. And so we're going to put you in groups and have you look at this table and just decide if you could only use 2 of these items, which 2 would you choose and why? So would you do assessment 1 and 2 and not do number 3? Would you do 1 and 3 and skip number 2, etc.? So take a look at what they cover, where you may be going to get the bang for your buck, make sure you don't have overlap or whatever. And there, again, no right or wrong answers, but we just want you to take a look at this table and think about how it might be useful to you. So we're going to put you back in the groups, and you're going to, again, record your responses on the slide. So team 1, team 2, team 3, which 2 items would you keep and why? So I'll give you a few minutes to do that. All right. Thanks, everybody, for taking a look at that. There are lots of ways to use these tables. Adapting tests for kids who need it is just one way. You could also use it if you wanted to maybe say for your evaluation, or you wanted to set some kind of a goal. You just wanted to look at how kids are doing in modeling. Maybe you just pick one SEP to kind of track throughout the year, or, there's all kinds of ways you can use these. So these, just knowing that these overview tables are there in the teacher version of the pre-post test may help you out. All right. And so, yeah, you can see different people chose different things, and that's okay. Nothing, no right or wrong. Just, think about why you're doing it. All right. So, and if you're interested in really digging more into the 3D assessments, we do a phase 2. We have a virtual course. It's not scheduled until April. There is the Canvas course that you can take anytime. And so we'd be happy to give you some more time to think about assessment, either asynchronously or synchronously with us. All right, I want to talk about our off-the-shelf lessons just real quick. We'll zip you through some of the things that are new, that just so that you're aware. We had a lot of teachers ask about atoms and molecules. Like, our kids don't know what those are. They're not learning them in 5th grade anymore, which is NGSS doesn't cover it in 5th grade. So, there are holes in kids' knowledge, and how can we kind of bring them up to speed? And so we have a new off-the-shelf lesson. It came out in the spring about what is matter made of, and the answer is atoms and molecules. And so you can see it involves some labs and demos, and follows our 5E format. And then we also had lots and lots of teachers and students struggling with claim evidence reasoning. And quite honestly, the MyStar staff struggled. We all struggled with it. Everybody struggles with claim evidence reasoning, right? And it shouldn't be that hard. And so,
But it is.
but it is. So, but I think we kind of came up with some scaffolding pieces that make it actually work. And the key, what we kind of decided is you have kids identify the scientific principle, and then they include that in their reasoning. So then their reasoning is different than their evidence, right? They do the evidence plus the principle, combine it in the reasoning. And you can provide it for kids. You can have them provide it. Lots and lots of ways to scaffold that. And then the difference between CERs and then argumentation, because people use those interchangeably all the time. The argumentation is a different type of writing. It's persuasive. And so you're doing a CER if you're just coming up with facts, and you're going to do the argumentation if you're using those facts to convince somebody else that your position is correct. And so this off-the-shelf lesson helps kids through that whole process. We also have a phase 2 asynchronous and asynchronous course on CERs if you'd like to join us. And then we have a couple of off-the-shelf lessons that might be useful, may have been useful more a week or two ago, but if you have some kind of break and you need to fill a couple days coming up, we have the Draw a Scientist, which is not a new idea at all, but kids draw, what do you think a scientist looks like? And then you kind of analyze that and break it down, give them some evidence to the contrary, and have them reevaluate. And then lab safety, here's some sample student work from Jen Para, who did this with her 8th graders last year. And then lab safety is another uncommon thing that science teachers like to go over at the beginning of the year. And so this is also a 5E short, maybe 2-day off-the-shelf lesson, and students end up coming up with their final product as a poster to emphasize lab safety. All right. So that's our what's new. We have just a few minutes left. These are all the things that we have coming up this fall. Lots more January and on also, but if you're interested in any of these, we have a number of learning series. We have some of our phase 2 things. We have a few phase 2 virtuals that are open to all Michigan teachers. We got some MySTEM funding to do that. So invite your friends and relatives. And that professional learning events section on your dashboard is where you would sign up. If you have people who are not MyStar subscribers, they can sign up on the MyStar public website for those ones that are open to all Michigan teachers.
And the links to register for these sessions are in the agenda, the session agenda. So that is the same link, whether you're a MyStar teacher or a non-MyStar teacher. Anyone can sign up through those links. So please feel free to share those with your friends and colleagues.
All right, do we have anything else, Lindsay, or are we at open questions?
That's it. So
All right,
thank you so
open
much,
questions.
Chris and Steph. We really appreciate all your content knowledge that you shared, and we know it was a lot of information for you, but hopefully you picked up some nuggets today and you'll be able to use something in your classroom tomorrow. We can stay for questions if folks have questions about how to use these or where to find things. I did want to say thank you for those that maybe have to skedaddle soon. Please sign out with one takeaway from the chat. We thank you so much for your time today. We know that the end of the school day is very trying, so we appreciate you being here.